I had spent 45 years and millions of dollars searching for my daughter. Hope. Every investigator, every lead, every dead end had crushed me. All that time, Sharon Fry, my personal assistant for 7 years, sat beside me, organizing those very files. One late night, as I reviewed old adoption records, she hummed a lullaby. It was the exact, unique melody I composed and sang only once, the day I held my newborn baby at Willow Creek Haven. My blood ran cold. Before I continue, drop a comment telling me where you're listening to this from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. You won't want to miss the ending. My empire, Henderson Hospitality, spanned the South, a chain of elegant boutique hotels from the Blue Ridge Mountains of Georgia down to the sun-kissed coasts of Florida. From the outside, my life was a picture of success, a testament to hard work and shrewd investments. But inside, my grand estate in rural Tennessee, with its manicured lawns and sweeping views, felt like a hollow shell. Every room, every quiet corner, whispered of the one thing all my millions couldn't buy. My daughter, Hope. The search for her consumed me. It wasn't just a part of my life, it was my life. My home office, usually a place for quarterly reports and expansion plans, had been transformed into a command center for a different kind of mission. One entire wall was covered with corkboards, a sprawling timeline of leads, dead ends, and faded photographs. There were maps of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, states where adopted children from Georgia had sometimes been placed. Each pushpin, each string connecting cities, represented months of investigator work, thousands of phone calls, and hopes built up only to be cruelly dashed. Binders, thick with reports and legal documents, lined custom-built shelves. Willow Creek Haven. Admissions, 1978. One label read, Adoptive Families, Ohio. Another. My team of private investigators, based out of Atlanta, sent weekly updates, each one a fresh wave of anticipation and dread. I lived for those reports, scrutinizing every detail, searching for the one clue everyone else might have missed. My personal assistant, Sharon Fry, was integral to this intricate operation. For 7 years, Sharon had been my right hand, quietly, efficiently navigating my demanding schedule, booking flights, answering calls, and, with an almost uncanny calm, organizing the very files related to my lifelong quest. She knew the names of all the investigators, understood the delicate coding system I'd devised for potential matches, and could lay out a state's adoption laws with precision. Sharon was a constant, steady presence, always there, always ready, never questioning the depth of my obsession. She simply made sure the machinery of my search kept running. She was 32 now, sharp and observant, but her focus was always on the task at hand, never delving into the raw emotion that fueled my tireless efforts. Just last month, a lead had surfaced from a small town in southern Ohio, a woman, approximately my daughter's age, adopted from a private agency, born in Georgia in the summer of '78. Her adopted parents had moved to Ohio shortly after her birth. For 2 weeks, I lived on a knife edge, unable to sleep, barely eating. My heart pounded with a rhythm I hadn't felt in decades. Sharon handled the logistics, confirming dates, discreetly reaching out to local contacts, setting up the delicate channels for further investigation. I found myself imagining this woman's face, her laugh, wondering if she had my eyes or the quick wit of my father. Then the call came. The woman's birth mother had a distinctive, rare medical condition noted in her file, one I did not share. Another false alarm, another woman, another family, another life, utterly unrelated to mine. I sat in my office, the phone heavy in my hand, the wall of corkboards mocking me with its unanswered questions. Sharon, sensing the quiet despair that filled the room, simply placed a fresh cup of Earl Grey on my desk and left without a word, her footsteps soft on the thick carpet. She knew how to give me space, how to navigate the grief that sometimes settled over me like a shroud. Everyone else, my remaining family, a few old friends, had long ago stopped asking about the search, their silence a clear sign they believed it was hopeless. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't. Hope wasn't just a name I'd given my baby. It was the only thing keeping me going. My mood after the Ohio lead went cold was like a storm cloud that never quite broke. I paced my office, phone pressed to my ear, snapping at investigators, then slamming the receiver down. "Another dead end, Sharon," I'd exclaim, my voice tight with frustration. "Another wild goose chase funded by my money." Sharon would simply nod, her expression unreadable, then quietly adjust the stack of new reports on my desk. She'd been with me for 7 years, long enough to know these storms would pass, but they seemed to be coming more often now, lasting longer. My once sharp wit had dulled into a constant edge, a readiness to criticize, to find fault. "This itinerary for the Atlanta trip," I said one morning, waving a printout at Sharon. "It's too tight. How am I supposed to meet with the architects, then the marketing team, then fly to Savannah all in one day? Are you even looking at these times, Sharon? Or are you just hitting print?" Sharon calmly took the paper. "The flight to Savannah is booked for first thing tomorrow morning, Margaret. This evening is just the 2 meetings in Atlanta. I've built in an hour of buffer between each." Her voice was soft, steady, a stark contrast to my agitated tone. "Buffer? What buffer?" I scoffed. "Traffic in Atlanta is a nightmare. You know this. You know how important this Savannah trip is. It's Willow Creek Haven, Sharon, the original place. I can't be late. This could be the lead." My voice caught on the last words, a sudden vulnerability that was quickly masked by renewed irritation. "Just rework it. See if you can get us a later flight tonight or an earlier one tomorrow. Anything to give me more breathing room?" Sharon nodded. "I'll see what I can do, Margaret. It's peak travel season, but I'll check for private charter options too, just in case." She turned to leave, her movements unhurried. "And where are the updated files from the adoption agency in Missouri?" I called after her. "I distinctly remember asking for those yesterday. Are they buried under a pile of hotel financials? Is that where my life's work is, Sharon? Buried?" Sharon paused at the door, her shoulders briefly slumping before she straightened. "No, Margaret. They're right here. I just finished categorizing them." She walked back to the filing cabinet, pulled out a slender folder, and placed it gently on my desk. "The new investigator found nothing significant, I'm afraid. Just more non-identifying information." I snatched the folder, flipping through the pages dismissively. "Nothing significant? Of course. Just like everything else." I sighed, leaning back in my plush leather chair, rubbing my temples. It's like searching for a needle in a haystack, a moving haystack. Sharon remained silent for a moment, her gaze resting on my tired face, a look in her eyes that was deeper than an employee's professional sympathy. It was a quiet sadness, an understanding that seemed to hold more than just pity for my frustration. "Can I get you some fresh tea, Margaret?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Or perhaps some water?" No, just clear this desk. I need to focus on the next quarter's projections. This search is draining me, Sharon. Financially, emotionally, everything." I waved vaguely at the stack of adoption files. As Sharon began to gather the discarded papers, tidying the desk with practiced movements, a soft, almost inaudible hum escaped her lips. It was a melody I'd never heard before, yet it felt familiar. Melancholic, intricate, with a gentle, rocking rhythm. A lullaby, I realized. Sharon was humming a lullaby. It was a unique tune, one that felt like it had been spun from a single, heartfelt moment. I paused, my eyes narrowing, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place catching in my mind. Sharon, unaware of my momentary stillness, continued humming softly as she carefully stacked the reports, her brow furrowed in concentration. The tune drifted through the opulent office, a quiet, unexpected counterpoint to my usual high-strung atmosphere. I shook my head, dismissing the strange feeling. "Just make sure those Savannah arrangements are flawless, Sharon," I said, my voice sharp once more, pulling my attention back to the practicalities of my life. "Flawless?" "Of course, Margaret," Sharon replied, her humming fading as she focused entirely on her task. "Everything will be perfect." She gathered the last of the files, her hands moving with an almost graceful precision, then turned to leave, leaving me alone once more in the quiet, echoing office, the faint trace of the mysterious lullaby lingering in the air. The phone rang late, startling me from a restless sleep. It was George, my lead investigator. His voice, usually guarded, had a tremor of excitement. "Margaret, we've got something. A strong lead. A woman named Carol, born July 1978, adopted through a private agency that sometimes worked with Willow Creek Haven. She grew up in Ohio, and her adoptive parents just passed, meaning some records might be opening up. Ohio, July 1978. It was a perfect match for the general timeline I had. My heart, which had felt like a dead stone in my chest for weeks, suddenly jolted to life. "Ohio," I whispered, the name a prayer. "Tell me everything, George, every single detail." From that moment, the world outside this new lead ceased to exist. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Food, an afterthought. My home office, already a monument to my obsession, became a frenzied war room. I instructed George to spare no expense. "Charter a jet if you have to," I told him, pacing my study floor, the Persian rug feeling like sand beneath my feet. "I want boots on the ground, DNA samples if we can get them, interviews with anyone who knew her adoptive family." Sharon, bless her patience, organized the chaos around me. She booked the private jet for George's team, managed the endless stream of incoming and outgoing calls, and coordinated with the lawyers to navigate the thorny adoption laws of Ohio. I barely looked at her, my gaze fixed on the corkboard, now dominated by a new cluster of pins and photos centered on a map of the Buckeye State. "Margaret," Sharon began one afternoon, her voice soft amidst the flurry of my phone calls. "I've confirmed the charter for the team, and I've got the contact details for Carol's adoptive parents' estate lawyer. He's willing to talk about non-identifying information, but he's hesitant about releasing anything directly to us without a court order." "Then get a court order, Sharon," I snapped, my eyes still scanning a blurred photograph of a young woman I desperately hoped was mine. "What's the holdup?" "Time is of the essence. Do whatever it takes, pay whatever you need to. Just make it happen." Sharon nodded, her face impassive. She simply placed a thick new binder labeled Ohio Lead, Carol M., on my desk. "I'll follow up with legal, Margaret. I just wanted to add that, it's funny. All this talk about Ohio." She paused, her gaze drifting towards the map. "That's where I grew up too. My adoptive parents settled there when I was just a baby. We moved around a bit within the state, but Ohio was home." She shrugged lightly. "It's a nice place. Familiar." I barely registered her words. Yes, Ohio. Just focus on Carol, Sharon," I mumbled, my mind already miles away, conjuring images of this potential daughter. "Is there any way we can get a birth certificate without raising alarms? A medical record? Anything that might have a blood type?" Sharon sighed, a subtle, almost inaudible sound. "I'm working on it, Margaret. It's difficult. Most records from that time are sealed." She paused again, gathering some stray papers. "My adoptive parents always said I was born in July, though they never gave me an exact date. They said it was just summer." She offered a small, wistful smile. "Always felt special being a summer baby." "Sharon, please," I said, finally looking at her, my impatience clear. "My daughter was born in July. That's why this lead is so critical. We can't waste time on tangential details. Just focus. Sharon's smile vanished, replaced by her usual professional composure. Right. Of course, Margaret. My apologies. I'll get back to the lawyers. She retreated, leaving me once again alone with my frantic hopes, the new binder, and the ghostly image of a woman I had never met, but already loved with the desperation of a lifetime. 2 days later, the call came. It wasn't George this time, but his second-in-command, hesitant and apologetic. Margaret, I'm so sorry. We've hit a wall. Carol's original birth certificate surfaced. Her birth mother's name is listed, and it's not yours. Not even close. Different last name, different age at birth, no connection to Georgia. It's a complete dead end. The world seemed to tilt. The pins on the map blurred. The name Carol shattered into 1,000 pieces in my mind. Another hope, lost. Another wave of grief, deeper and more crushing than the last. I sank into my chair, the phone slipping from my numb fingers, the silence of the office deafening. The search, the obsession, the money, the frantic energy, all for nothing. Again. My chest ached with a familiar, hollow despair. The news about Carol hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just disappointment, it was exhaustion, pure and profound. 45 years. 45 years of an ache in my soul, and every new lead, every fresh hope, just ripped the wound open wider before slamming it shut again. I sat in my office chair, the silence echoing my inner emptiness. The wall of maps and photos, once a source of frantic energy, now mocked me with its empty promises. I looked at the neatly organized binders, the detailed reports, the stacks of legal documents Sharon had so meticulously arranged, and all I saw was a monument to my own failure. The grand estate felt colder than ever. My dogs, usually a comforting presence, were asleep at my feet, unaware of the chasm that had just opened up inside me. I stared out at the window, past the manicured lawns, towards the hazy Tennessee hills, and felt utterly, completely alone. Sharon walked in quietly, a fresh pot of coffee steaming gently on a tray. She placed it on the credenza, her movements as soft and unobtrusive as always. She cleared a few stray papers from my desk, her eyes occasionally flicking to my face, a silent question in their depths. I knew she was waiting for me to speak, to lash out, to grieve in my usual tempestuous way. But today, I had no fire left, just ash. Another dead end, Sharon, I said, my voice barely a whisper, hoarse with unshed tears. It felt strange to say it out loud, to admit the defeat. Another life, another family, completely unrelated to mine. All that money, all that time. I shook my head slowly. What was I thinking? What makes me believe she's even still alive? That she'd want to find me? Sharon didn't reply, just poured a cup of coffee, the aroma filling the room. She added a splash of cream, just how I liked it, and set it gently on my desk. Her hands were steady, but I felt a quiet energy emanating from her, a calm that somehow infuriated me in my storm of despair. My mother, I continued, speaking not really to Sharon, but to the ghosts in the room. She kept it from me for so long. Decades. All the shame, the scandal. And then, on her deathbed, she finally told me the name. Willow Creek Haven, Savannah, Georgia, like it would somehow absolve her. Tell me the name of the place where they stole my baby, where they tore a piece of my heart out. A tear finally tracked a path down my cheek, hot and stinging. I held her for hours, Sharon, just a few precious hours. My hope, I named her Hope, in my heart, even though I knew they'd give her a new name, a new life. And since you've made it this far, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps me keep bringing stories like this. I picked up the small, tarnished silver locket I often kept on my desk, the one my mother had given me, containing the faded picture of my baby from that day. I traced its cold metal. I just wanted her to know she was loved, that even if I couldn't keep her, I loved her. I sang to her. One song, a lullaby I made up just for her in those few hours. A silly, melancholic tune. No one else knew it, just me and her in that room at Willow Creek Haven. I wanted her to carry a piece of me, a secret melody only we shared wherever she went, a little, quiet melody of love. As I spoke, describing the unique lullaby, I finally looked at Sharon. She was standing perfectly still by the credenza, one hand suspended above a stack of files. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, fixed on me with an intensity I'd never seen before. For a split second, I saw a flicker of something in her gaze. Shock, recognition, a profound stillness that was utterly out of place. It was a strange, almost unsettling reaction, a sudden break in her usual composed demeanor. Then, just as quickly, the moment passed. Her expression smoothed over, the professional mask firmly back in place. She blinked, her hand slowly lowered to the files, and she cleared her throat. A small, almost imperceptible sound. I'm so sorry, Margaret, she said, her voice a little softer, a little huskier than usual. It's heartbreaking, truly. I barely registered her words, too lost in my own pain, too consumed by the decades of grief. The moment was gone, buried under the weight of my sorrow. I just nodded, turning the locket over and over in my trembling fingers. The image of my infant daughter, the memory of that secret lullaby, aching in my chest. Heartbreaking doesn't even begin to cover it, Sharon, I whispered, the weight of the world pressing down on me. It simply doesn't begin to cover it. The hollow ache in my chest persisted, a constant dull throb that overshadowed even the frantic pace of my business. Days bled into one another, marked only by the arrival of new, fruitless reports from my investigators, each one another nail in the coffin of my hope. The Grand Office, once my sanctuary and command center, now felt like a mausoleum of lost dreams. I stopped bothering with my appearance, let my hair go unstyled, wore comfortable, shapeless clothes. What was the point? My empire felt meaningless, my success a mockery. Sharon continued her work with her usual quiet efficiency, but the air between us had shifted. I no longer snapped at her. I barely spoke at all. She moved around my office like a soft shadow, organizing files, answering calls. But she seemed to intuit my need for silence. She would bring me tea, not just the usual Earl Grey, but sometimes a calming chamomile, brewed just so, without my asking. She'd place it gently on my desk, her presence a quiet anchor in my sea of despair, then retreat. One particularly desolate afternoon, a cold rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm inside me. I was slumped in my chair, staring at the wall of maps, the empty spaces between the pins seeming to yawn wider than ever. The locket, the one with the faded picture of my baby, lay open on my desk, its tiny image mocking me with its fragile memory. I could feel the tears welling up, a familiar burning behind my eyes. But I was too tired even to cry. Sharon entered, not with a file or a message, but with a small, steaming mug of cocoa. Something she hadn't brought me in years. She placed it beside my hand, the warmth seeping into my cold fingers. Instead of leaving, she pulled up a small, upholstered chair a few feet away and sat down, her gaze fixed on the rainy garden outside. She didn't speak, didn't offer platitudes. She just sat, her presence a soft, comforting weight in the room. After a long silence, long enough that I felt my shoulders begin to relax just a fraction, she finally spoke, her voice low and thoughtful. My adoptive mother. She used to tell me that sometimes the things you search for aren't found by chasing them. Sometimes they find you, when you finally stop looking, when your heart is quiet enough to hear them. She paused, her eyes still on the rain-streaked glass. She said that loss isn't just an empty space. It's also a memory, a story, a part of who you are. And sometimes, the most important part. Her words weren't a professional consolation. They were different. They held a quiet understanding, a wisdom that resonated with the raw ache in my soul in a way no investigator's report or therapist's advice ever had. I looked at her, really looked at Sharon for what felt like the very first time. Not as my assistant, not as a reflection of my frustration, but as another human being, sitting across from me, sharing a moment of quiet, shared humanity. Her profile was soft in the muted light, framed by a few escaping strands of dark hair. Her hands rested clasped in her lap, fingers long and elegant. My gaze drifted, taking in the gentle slope of her nose, the curve of her chin. Then something made me pause. It was the precise curve of her ear, half hidden by a wisp of hair. It was a small detail, one I'd surely seen 1,000 times in the past 7 years, but had never truly registered. Now, in the soft light, against the backdrop of rain and sorrow, it caught my eye. There was something familiar about it. A shape, a delicate curve, an almost identical fold. It tugged at a distant memory, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place, something buried deep in the archives of my mind. It was a fleeting, almost imperceptible sensation, like the ghost of a touch or a forgotten scent. I blinked, the moment passing, the rational part of my brain dismissing it as a trick of the light, a figment of my grief-addled imagination. Sharon turned her head slightly, her gaze meeting mine, and offered a faint, gentle smile. "It's okay to rest, Margaret," she said softly. "The search doesn't have to be a race." I just nodded, my throat tight. I couldn't articulate the strange, unsettling feeling that had just passed through me, that fleeting sense of recognition. I just looked at her, truly looked, and for a moment, the heavy burden of my decades-long search lightened, just a tiny bit, in the unexpected warmth of her quiet presence. The weeks since the Ohio lead collapsed had been a blur of muted despair. My sprawling estate, once a testament to my ambition, now felt like a gilded cage. I drifted through the days, the weight of a lifetime's search pressing down on me, leaving me listless and hollow. The wall of maps in my office, once vibrant with hope, now seemed to mock me with its unanswered questions. My investigators were still out there, dutifully following new, faint trails, but my own faith had dwindled to a fragile ember. One evening, I found myself still at my desk long after the sun had set, the only light in my office coming from the single lamp beside me. I wasn't working, not really. I was merely staring at old photographs, grainy images of anonymous faces, each one a fleeting possibility, each one a familiar disappointment. On the desk lay the small tarnished silver locket I often kept close, its delicate clasp open to reveal the faded image of my baby. I ran my thumb over the tiny, indistinct face, a familiar ache twisting in my gut. Sharon was in the office with me, a quiet, reassuring presence. She was meticulously organizing new reports, stacking binders and labeling files for the next wave of investigations. Even in my profound despair, I appreciated her dedication, her unwavering focus. She moved with a soft grace, a comforting rhythm that usually went unnoticed, a part of the background hum of my busy life. Then, it happened. As Sharon bent over a box of documents, her head tilted in concentration, a soft, almost imperceptible sound escaped her lips. A hum. It was a melody, a low, melancholic tune, unique and intricate. My breath hitched in my throat. My entire body went rigid, every muscle locking into place. The locket slipped from my numb fingers, clattering softly onto the polished wood of my desk. It was a lullaby. The melody was unmistakable, The exact, precise sequence of notes, the gentle, rocking rhythm. It was the song I had composed, a deeply personal tune I had sung only once. During those precious few hours, I held my newborn daughter, Hope, in the small, sterile room at Willow Creek Haven, decades ago. No one else knew that song. No one. It was born of my heart, for her ears alone. My blood ran cold, then surged with a terrifying, impossible heat. The world around me seemed to warp, the familiar office dissolving into a distorted haze. I stared at Sharon, who was still humming softly, completely unaware of the seismic shift that had just occurred in my universe. Her brow was furrowed slightly as she sorted papers, her head gently swaying with the tune. Every sound in the room vanished, replaced by the deafening thunder of my own heartbeat. My mind raced, frantically searching for an explanation, for any rational reason why this woman, my assistant, would know my lullaby. It was an impossibility. A cruel trick of memory, a figment of my grief. Yet the melody was undeniably exact. I took a slow, shuddering breath, trying to calm the violent tremor that had seized my hands. I had to ask. I had to know. But I couldn't betray the raw, terrifying hope that was suddenly, brutally resurrecting itself in my chest. "Sharon," I said, my voice barely a whisper, forcing it to sound as casual as I could manage, though it came out rough, strained. "That song, that hum you were just making, it's a pretty tune. Where did you learn it?" Sharon looked up, startled, her humming instantly ceasing. She gave a small, embarrassed smile. "Oh, that," she said, her voice light, completely devoid of alarm. "Sorry, Margaret. Sometimes I just hum when I'm focusing. It's an old lullaby. My adoptive mother used to sing it to me when I was little. She said it was a special song from my birth mother. She even gave me this old ornate music box that played it." She gestured vaguely towards her neck, then returned to her papers, completely oblivious to the silent scream tearing through my soul. Sharon's casual explanation of the lullaby landed like a thunderclap in my quiet office, shattering the comfortable illusion of my life. My adoptive mother used to sing it, a special song from her birth mother. The words echoed in my mind, each syllable a cruel twist of the knife, or perhaps a desperate, terrifying promise. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage. No one else knew that song. I had created it, spun it from the rawest threads of my teenage heart, for my baby, for Hope, alone in that sterile room. The terror of being wrong, of misinterpreting, of building hope on another flimsy foundation was immense. But the terror of being right? That was even greater. After decades of searching, of chasing shadows and dead ends, the very idea that my daughter could have been beside me, organizing my life, listening to my laments, felt like a cosmic joke, too cruel or too miraculous to be true. I forced a breath, willing my voice to be steady, to betray none of the seismic shift happening inside me. That's quite a story, Sharon," I managed, trying to sound intrigued, not utterly unhinged. "A music box? That's so thoughtful. Did your adoptive mother ever tell you more about it?" "About your birth mother?" I kept my eyes fixed on the stack of papers in front of me, terrified to look at her, terrified of what I might see, or what she might notice in my own face. Sharon shrugged lightly, turning from the files, her expression open and unaware. "Not much, really. She just said it was a gift, a way for my birth mother to feel close, even though she couldn't keep me. Said it was special. I guess it made me feel like I had a piece of my history, even if I didn't know the story." She paused, a small, wistful smile touching her lips. "I used to play that music box every night as a little girl. It was comforting. Every word was another jolt, another piece clicking into place. Couldn't keep me. Willow Creek Haven. A piece of my history. My lullaby." I could barely breathe. I had to go further, gently, carefully, like defusing a bomb. "You mentioned your adoptive mother passed away recently," I said, my voice softer now, genuinely empathetic. "I'm truly sorry for your loss. Did her passing open up any new information for you? Sometimes those things can trigger legal processes or old documents." Sharon nodded slowly, her gaze drifting. "It did, actually. After the funeral, when we were clearing out her things, I found a sealed envelope. Nothing official, just some non-identifying information from the adoption agency. Nothing specific, no names, but it confirmed a few things." She seemed hesitant, as if debating how much to share, but then continued, probably sensing my genuine, if secretly frantic, interest. "It mentioned my birth mother's age, late teens, I think, and that she was very young, unmarried, and that the adoption was private, arranged through an agency in a neighboring state to Ohio." Late teens, unmarried, private agency, neighboring state. My mind raced. The adoption agency in Savannah, Georgia, often placed babies in Ohio. It was all aligning, too perfectly. "And a birth date?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, as if making polite conversation. "Did it mention a specific month or season by chance?" Sharon thought for a moment. "It just confirmed what my adoptive parents always said. Summer, July. It never gave the exact day, but my adoptive mom always celebrated my summer birthday in July. She always said I was a July baby. July, 1978. Late teens, unmarried, private adoption from Georgia, ending up in Ohio. The lullaby. The pieces slammed together, forming a horrifying, exhilarating mosaic in my mind. The world spun. This wasn't another false lead. This wasn't a coincidence. This was too specific, too personal. It defied probability. My daughter, Hope. She was sitting right across from me. She had been for 7 years. My heart soared with a terrifying joy, then plummeted with a crushing wave of guilt and regret. All the harsh words, the dismissals, the times I'd snapped at her, completely blind to the miracle standing before me, the woman who had organized my fruitless search for herself. I wanted to reach out, to grab her, to scream her name, to hold her close and never let go. But I couldn't. Not yet. I had to be certain. I needed absolute, undeniable proof. The weight of this revelation was staggering, almost too much to bear. It was a secret that had consumed my life, and now the answer had been under my nose the whole time. A lifetime of searching brought to a sudden, impossible, breathtaking halt. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together in my mind, forming a picture so clear, so terrifyingly precise, that my breath hitched. The lullaby, July, Ohio, the private adoption. It all pointed to one impossible, undeniable truth. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild, desperate drum. Sharon. Hope. It couldn't be. Could it? I spent the rest of that evening in a trance, barely registering the passing hours. Every memory of Sharon, every dismissive comment, every casual interaction replayed in my mind, imbued with a horrifying new meaning. The 7 years she had spent by my side, quietly organizing the very files of my impossible search. The irony was a bitter, searing pain in my chest. All the money, the investigators, the endless flights, the maps, the dead ends, the decades of grief. And she had been making my coffee, arranging my meetings, sitting 3 feet away every single morning. I barely slept. The first hint of dawn found me sitting at my desk, still in a daze, the locket with my baby's faded photo clutched in my hand. I needed to know. I needed absolute, undeniable proof. When Sharon arrived precisely at 8 o'clock, her usual calm demeanor belied the earthquake that had rocked my world. She walked in, her arms laden with the day's mail and a fresh thermos of coffee, her hair neatly pulled back, dressed in her usual smart, understated clothes. My gaze, however, wasn't on her face. It was drawn, as if by an invisible thread, to the delicate silver chain around her neck. There it was, a tiny, tarnished silver locket. It was small, almost hidden beneath the collar of her blouse, but it was there. My heart leapt, then plummeted. "Good morning, Margaret," Sharon said, her voice bright and professional, completely unaware. She placed the mail on my desk and began to pour coffee. "Sharon," I said, my voice coming out as a strangled whisper, rough and unfamiliar. She paused, looking up, her brow furrowed in concern at my tone. "Are you all right, Margaret? You look pale." I ignored her question. My eyes were fixed on the locket, glinting faintly against her skin. "Sharon," I repeated, a little louder. "That locket. May I see it?" She looked surprised, then reached for the chain, pulling the locket from beneath her collar. She held it out to me, a small, puzzled smile on her face. "Oh, this? It's just an old family piece. My adoptive grandmother always said it had always been in the family. I never take it off." My hand trembled as I took the locket from her, the cold metal surprisingly heavy in my palm. It was tarnished with age, just as described in my mother's confession. My thumb grazed the back, my breath catching in my throat. Crudely engraved, almost worn smooth by time, were the words, July 12th, 1978, and beneath it, a single clear initial, H. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring my vision. July 12th, 1978. That was the day, the exact day I held my newborn daughter, Hope, for the first and only time. And what's inside, Sharon?" I asked, my voice barely audible, thick with emotion. "Have you ever looked inside?" Sharon's puzzled smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of unease as she saw the raw emotion on my face. "Not really, Margaret. It's so old and the pictures are so faded, I always just assumed they were distant relatives. I never even really tried to look closely." With trembling fingers, I opened the clasp. Inside, almost invisible without magnification, were two extremely faded tiny photographs. One of a newborn baby, its face blurry, but unmistakably the same image from the photo my mother had kept, the one I had on my own desk. And the other was of a very young woman, no more than 17, her face filled with a mixture of fear and profound love. It was me, exactly as I had looked on that devastating day. I looked up, my eyes streaming with tears, meeting Sharon's. Her face was pale, her mouth slightly open, the realization slowly dawning in her own eyes as she looked at the locket in my hand, then at my face. The lullaby. The adoption. July. Ohio. And now, this. "Hope?" I whispered, the name a lifetime's prayer, a question, a desperate plea. Sharon's eyes widened, filling with an identical, overwhelming recognition. Her hand flew to her mouth, a small, choked sob escaping her lips. "Mom," she whispered back, the single word shattering the decades of silence, the barriers of wealth and class, the years of proximity and blindness, the expensive search, the millions, the endless despair, all of it evaporated in that single, breathtaking moment. The answer had been here, all along, in the quiet hum of a lullaby, in the dates on a tarnished locket, in the eyes of the woman who had brought me coffee every single morning. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Your support is what brings these stories to more people.